Welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be looking at something pretty fascinating, generative AI for software testers. We've got some source material that goes way beyond the hype, you know,
Yeah.
and it really gets into the nitty-gritty of how testers can use these AI tools, not to just, keep their heads above water, but really boost their income and their careers.
What really stood out to me
Hmm.
when I was looking at this material is just how practical it is. There are real-world case studies in here, testers who have used these techniques to become more valuable, more efficient, and, ultimately more in demand. There's even one case study about a freelancer who saw a 60% income increase
Oh.
just by offering these specialized services. Pretty amazing stuff.
60%. That's incredible. That's what caught my eye too. But before we kind of get into the really juicy success stories, I think it's good to take a step back. And for any software testers out there who might be new to this, can you give us like a quick rundown of what generative AI actually is and why it's such a big deal in our field?
Sure. So in the simplest terms, generative AI is all about algorithms that can create new content based on the data that they've been trained on. So instead of just analyzing existing information like a lot of other types of AI, these algorithms can actually generate new things like code test cases, even synthetic data, which is a game changer for software testing.
So it's not just about AI doing what we already do faster or something. It's AI doing things we couldn't even really do before.
Exactly. And the sources we're looking at today really drive home this point. The testers who embrace these tools are going to have a serious advantage moving forward.
So it's not about AI replacing testers. It's more like AI-powered testers replacing the ones who don't adapt.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's about upskilling, evolving your skill set to stay ahead of the curve. The software testing landscape is changing so rapidly, and these sources make it clear that generative AI is at the forefront of that change.
So we've established the need to upskill is pretty urgent. But beyond just, keeping our jobs, what are some of the benefits that these sources outline?
Well, the benefits go way beyond job security. Imagine being able to offload all those tedious, time-consuming tasks that used to take up hours of your day. Generative AI can handle that for you, freeing you up to focus on the more strategic, creative, and frankly more interesting aspects of testing.
Working smarter, not harder.
Exactly, working strategically. Instead of manually writing hundreds of test cases, you can have an AI tool generate them for you, based on the code or user stories. That frees you up to analyze the results, identify patterns, and really dig into the nitty-gritty of ensuring quality.
So let's get specific. The source material outlines 4 key AI techniques that can really boost a tester's capabilities. What's the first one we should dive into?
Let's start with automated test case generation. This is where AI really shines. You can feed an AI system your code or user stories, and it can spit out a comprehensive set of test cases, covering all sorts of scenarios, things that a human tester might not even think of.
That's pretty mind-blowing. Can you give me a real-world example of how that might work?
Sure, imagine you're testing an e-commerce platform. An AI tool could analyze the code for the checkout process and automatically generate test cases for every possible scenario. Different payment methods, shipping options, discount codes, you name it. It's like having an army of testers working around the clock.
And what kind of impact does that have for the tester? Who knows how to use this kind of tool?
It's huge. Think about all the time you save. Instead of spending days or even weeks crafting those test cases manually, you can focus on analyzing the results, identifying potential issues, and refining your testing strategy. Plus, by catching more bugs early on, you're adding immense value to the development process.
It's not just speed, it's quality and efficiency as well. All right, what's the next AI technique we should explore?
Let's move on to intelligent bug detection and reporting. This is where AI's ability to analyze huge amounts of data really comes in handy. We're talking about algorithms that can sift through code, user interactions, system logs, even social media chatter to find those hidden bugs. That might slip past even the most eagle-eyed human tester.
So AI is like our super-powered bug-sniffing dog.
It's even better than that. Imagine you're testing a mobile app. An AI tool could analyze thousands of user sessions and notice that a particular button on the screen is causing crashes, but only under very specific circumstances, like a certain type of device or operating system. A human tester might miss that kind of pattern, but the AI can flag it immediately, saving everyone a lot of time and headaches.
So it's not just about finding the bugs, it's about reporting them in a way that's helpful, right?
Exactly. These AI tools can generate really detailed reports that include steps to reproduce the issue, the potential impact, and even suggestions for fixing it. based on patterns from past bug fixes. It's like having a bug detective and a repair manual all rolled into one.
I'm starting to see how these AI techniques can really elevate a tester's role. What's the third technique on our list?
Let's talk about enhanced test coverage and risk prediction. This is where AI can actually help us become more strategic in our testing efforts. Imagine an AI tool that can analyze past data on bugs, code complexity, user traffic patterns, even external factors like security vulnerabilities, to identify which areas of an application are most likely to have problems.
So it's like having an AI crystal ball that tells us where to focus our testing efforts.
It's all about leveraging data to make smarter decisions. Let's say you're testing a banking app. The AI might analyze past data and determine that the features handling financial transactions are statistically more prone to errors. It would then recommend focusing more testing resources on those areas to ensure maximum security and reliability.
Makes sense. It's about being strategic, prioritizing our efforts where they'll have the biggest impact. Okay, we've covered automated test cases, intelligent bug detection, and risk prediction. What's that fourth and final technique we should discuss?
The fourth technique is data augmentation and synthetic data generation. This is particularly useful when dealing with sensitive data, or situations where it's difficult to obtain real user data for testing purposes.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break that down for me a little bit. What exactly is synthetic data, and how can it help testers?
So imagine you need to test a new feature on a social media platform. That relies on user data, like a recommendation algorithm. Gathering real user data for testing can be a real nightmare, not to mention a potential privacy violation.
You can't just go snooping around in people's private messages to test your new feature.
Right, exactly. That's where synthetic data comes in. Generative AI can actually create artificial data that mimics the patterns and characteristics of real user data, but doesn't contain any actual personal information. It's like creating a safe, simulated environment for testing.
So it's like building a virtual testing playground where we can experiment without any real-world consequences.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Synthetic data allows us to test these new features and algorithms without compromising user privacy or violating any regulations. Plus, you can generate these massive data sets tailored to very specific testing scenarios, something that would be pretty much impossible with real user data.
It sounds like testers who are skilled in, generating and working with synthetic data are going to be in high demand.
Absolutely. Companies, especially in those privacy-sensitive sectors, like healthcare finance, even social media, they're increasingly seeking out testers with this expertise.
This all sounds incredibly promising, but I'm sure some of our listeners are thinking, okay, this is great in theory, but how do I actually see these benefits in my own career?
And that's where those real-world case studies come in. We're going to look at specific examples of how generative AI is already making a huge difference for testers out there.
All right, stay tuned because we're just getting started. Welcome back to our deep dive. I'm still kind of buzzing from everything we talked about in the last segment about, generative AI and all these amazing things it can do.
Yeah, it really is incredible stuff.
But before we get too carried away with all the possibilities, I think it's important to maybe ground ourselves a little bit and talk about some of the challenges that testers might face when actually trying to implement generative AI in their work. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think one of the biggest hurdles is just the learning curve. These are new tools, new techniques, and it takes time and effort to really master them.
So it's an investment. Testers need to be willing to, put in the time to learn these new skills.
Absolutely. And it's not just about learning how to use the tools themselves. It's also about really understanding the AI concepts behind them so you can use them effectively and really interpret the results.
So it's kind of like learning a new language almost.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. You can't just memorize a few phrases. You need to understand the grammar and the syntax to really communicate effectively.
And just like learning a new language, I imagine there's going to be some bumps in the road, right?
Oh, for sure. But it's important to be patient, to experiment and not be afraid to ask for help.
So true. It's easy to get overwhelmed with all the new information out there.
Yeah.
All right, so besides the learning curve, what other challenges might testers run into?
Well, another big one is data quality. Remember, these AI models are only as good as the data they're trained on. So if the data is incomplete, inaccurate, or biased, then the AI's output is going to suffer as well.
Garbage in, garbage out, right?
Exactly. So testers need to become much more data savvy. They need to understand how to source clean and prepared data for AI training. That's going to be a really critical skill moving forward.
So it's not just about being a testing expert. It's almost about becoming a data expert as well.
Yeah, the lines are definitely blurring. And it's not just about the quality of the data. It's also about the quantity. These AI models often need massive amounts of data to train effectively.
We got to make sure we're feeding our AI models a healthy diet.
Right.
Okay, so even with, the perfect data, AI is not a silver bullet, right?
Definitely not. It's important to remember that these models can still make mistakes. It's a tool that can augment our capabilities as testers, but it's not going to replace human judgment altogether.
So it's about finding that balance between automation and human oversight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We still need human testers to interpret the results, to make informed decisions, and ultimately to make sure that the software meets the highest quality standards.
Okay, so we've talked about the learning curve, the importance of data. Are there any other potential pitfalls that testers should be aware of?
Yeah, I think another one is the risk of what we call black box testing. This is where you're basically feeding inputs into the AI model, observing the outputs, but you don't really understand how the model is making its decisions.
So you're trusting the AI to do its magic, but you have no idea how the trick works.
Exactly. And while that can be really efficient sometimes, it can also be risky. Because if you don't understand the reasoning behind the AI's decisions, it can be difficult to trust the results, and it can be hard to troubleshoot problems when they come up.
So we can't just blindly follow the AI's lead. We need to understand the why behind the what.
Yeah, and that comes back to upskilling. Testers really need to develop a deeper understanding of these AI concepts so they can use these tools effectively, interpret the results,
Right.
and really advocate for transparency.
Okay, so we've talked about some of the challenges, but what about the opportunities? What are some of the new exciting roles that you see emerging?
Oh, there are tons. I think we're going to start to see roles like AI test architect, someone who designs and implements AI-driven testing strategies for the entire organization.
So they're like the AI testing guru.
Yeah, exactly. They're responsible for staying up to date on all the latest advancements.
Yeah.
And making sure that the organization is using the best possible tools and techniques.
That sounds like a pretty sweet gig. What other kinds of roles do you see popping up?
I think another crucial role is going to be the AI test data engineer. This person would be responsible for sourcing, cleaning, and preparing data, specifically for AI-driven testing.
So like the AI's personal chef?
Yeah, something like that. This role requires a really deep understanding of both data science and software testing methodologies.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So it's clear that, generative AI isn't just changing how we test software, it's changing the types of roles that are going to be in demand and the types of skills that testers are going to need. But I imagine some folks listening right now might be feeling a little overwhelmed. What advice would you give to someone who's feeling a bit lost and unsure of where to even begin with upskilling?
I think the most important thing is to embrace a growth mindset. Don't be afraid to step outside of your comfort zone and experiment. Start by exploring those resources we talked about earlier, like online courses, boot camps, or even just diving into some open source projects that are using AI.
Make learning a habit even if it's just 30 minutes a day.
Exactly. And don't try to do it all at once. Start with the basics, build a solid foundation, and gradually expand your knowledge.
It's a marathon, not a sprint, right?
Right.
And as you're learning, don't be afraid to share what you're learning with others. That's how we all grow.
Absolutely. Participate in online forums, attend conferences, mentor your colleagues. Sharing your knowledge not only helps others, but it also really solidifies your own understanding.
It's a win-win. Okay, so you've talked about the challenges, the opportunities, even some tips for getting started with upskilling. But before we wrap up this segment, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier about AI not being a silver bullet. Can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit more?
Sure, I think it's important to remember that generative AI is a really powerful tool. But it's still just a tool. It's not a replacement for human judgment, creativity, or empathy.
So while AI can automate certain tasks and help us work more efficiently, it's ultimately up to us as human testers to make sure that the software we're building is truly high quality, user-friendly, and actually meets the needs of real people.
Exactly, and that's where the real value of human testers lies, in our ability to think critically, to empathize with users, and to really advocate for the best possible user experience.
So even in this increasingly automated world, those uniquely human skills are still essential.
Absolutely. And those skills combined with a strong understanding of AI, or what's going to set testers apart in the future.
This has been a super insightful conversation so far, but there's still so much more to explore. When we come back in part 3, we'll delve into some practical tips for actually implementing these generative AI techniques. We'll talk about how to advocate for AI adoption within your organization, and I'll leave you with some inspiring thoughts on the future of software testing in this brave new world of AI.
Looking forward to it.
Welcome back to our deep dive into generative AI for software testers.
We've covered a lot of ground, exploring the what, the why, even some of those potential hurdles.
The need to upskill data quality, that balance between AI and, keeping humans in the loop.
Right, right.
So now I think it's time to get practical. Talk about how testers can actually start using these AI tools in their day-to-day work.
Yeah, let's get down to brass tacks.
Where do we even begin?
Well, I think the first step is to really pinpoint those areas in your current testing process that are just screaming for automation. Look for tasks that are repetitive, time-consuming, or just prone to human error.
Those tasks that make you think like, oh, there's got to be a better way.
Exactly, like generating test cases, analyzing huge data sets, even writing those detailed bug reports.
Okay, so we've found those tasks. What's next?
Well, then it's time to do your homework.
Uh-huh.
There's a ton of AI-powered testing tools out there, and it's really important to find the ones that are the right fit for you.
I imagine it can be a bit overwhelming, though.
It can be.
How do we even begin to sort through all the options?
Start by really understanding your testing requirements. What types of applications are you testing? What are your biggest pain points? What kind of budget are you working with?
So finding tools that align with, your specific goals and resources.
Exactly. Once you've kind of narrowed down the field, reach out to vendors,
Mm.
request demos, take advantage of free trials.
You got to get your hands dirty, try things out.
For sure. And don't be afraid to experiment. See which tools feel intuitive, which ones integrate well with your existing workflows, and most importantly, which ones actually deliver on their promises.
So we've done our research. We found a few promising tools. We're ready to actually start using them. What's the best way to introduce these new tools to our team and into our workflow?
I would say start small. Maybe pilot the tools on a specific project or a particular testing task.
Don't try to boil the ocean.
Yeah, exactly. That allows you to get comfortable with the tools, work out any kinks, and gather some real data on their effectiveness.
And involve your team throughout that whole process, right?
Absolutely. Get their feedback, address any concerns they might have, make sure everyone feels like they're part of the journey.
Collaboration, communication. Bring in everybody along.
Exactly.
But implementing any new technology can be tough, especially within a larger organization. How can testers effectively advocate for adopting these tools?
I think the key is to focus on the value proposition. Don't just talk about, the cool technology. Talk about the real benefits it can bring to the organization.
You show, don't tell.
Exactly.
Back up your arguments with data, with real-world examples, projections of how this can improve efficiency, accuracy, even the bottom line.
Exactly. And be prepared to address concerns head on.
Those tough questions.
Yeah. About costs, about timelines, about the impact on existing roles.
Be transparent, be proactive, have those open and honest conversations. Advocacy is a marathon, not a sprint. It's about continually educating stakeholders, demonstrating the value and building trust over time.
It's about creating that culture of innovation where everyone is excited about embracing these new possibilities.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive. As we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with, a sense of optimism about the future.
I think the future of software testing is incredibly bright, and generative AI is going to play a huge role in shaping that future.
And it's not about AI replacing testers. It's about empowering testers to work smarter, to be more strategic.
To deliver even more value.
Exactly. So to everyone listening out there, I hope this deep dive has inspired you to explore these possibilities and to maybe take those first steps toward upskilling, embracing this exciting new technology.
The future is here. It's full of potential.
This has been the deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring.